Chapter 81. Being courted. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Noodletown translated. Editor. Noodletown translated. Do we know each other? Huamian asked, confused. The male doctor wore a pair of black frame glasses and looked quite shy. You might not know me. Let me introduce myself. My name is Zhu Cheng. I am one of the doctors in the ophthalmology clinic. I've seen you many times when you visited our clinic. You were Dr. Ning's girlfriend, right? I heard that you guys broke up recently, so I figured that my chance was here. I've liked you for a long time. You are so gentle, cute, and beautiful, not to mention you have a stunning figure. You are my type. The male doctor rambled on for a while before handing over the bouquet of roses to Huamian. Huamian was stunned. It seemed a little too soap opera-like. The nurses behind her could barely contain their laughter. Huamian looked at the roses and then back at Dr. Zhu and said, I'm sorry, but you're not my type. What's your type? I can change. Dr. Zhu would not give up. Huamian waved her hand and said, No, you don't have to change. What's your type? I'll change to something else. Anyways, thank you. I can't accept the flowers. Huamian, please consider what I said. No, it's okay. I'm in a rush and need to get to work. I'm going to go now. Thank you. Then, without waiting for Dr. Zhu's response, Huamian rushed out the side door and hid in the OB/GYN clinic. Dr. Zhu was clearly disappointed. He stood with his head hanging outside of the door. Huang Yu walked up to him and said, Hey, Mr. Dork, stop thinking about Huamian. You're not her type. Go home and take a good look at yourself in the mirror. It's not your fault that you're ugly, but it's wrong for you to come out and scare others. Then, Huang Yu ran away in laughter. Dr. Zhu was slightly stunned. After a while, he slowly walked away with the roses in his hand. He had had a crush on Huamian for a long time. In the past, when he saw Huamian speaking to Ning Ziyuan, he noticed that she had dimples when she smiled, giving him a warm feeling. When He-Man told him that Huamian and Ning Ziyuan had broken up, he decided to give it a shot and confess his feelings to her. He never thought that she would not even give him a chance. True, Dr. Zhu was a little ugly, but that was not the point. Even if it were an incredibly handsome man who stood before her today, she would still say no. There was already a man who was deeply planted inside her heart since 7 years ago, and no one could replace him. After Qin Chu gave Huamian her afternoon tea, he drove directly to the airport, since he had to catch a flight to another city. His assistant did not understand what his boss was up to. President Qin had been working the entire morning, not even eating lunch before going out, and only arriving at the airport in time to board the plane. Assistant Yang felt like President Qin was always acting extremely mysteriously. Maybe he has a mistress. Is it that woman from last time? Yang thought. President Qin, this is the contract you'll be signing with the client during your meeting this afternoon. Here are the documents. You will be able to take a detailed look when you're on the plane. Okay. President Qin, you haven't had lunch. I wanted to order take-out for you, but it's already too late. Why don't you have something to eat on the plane? I heard that the lunch on first class is quite delicious. Okay. Qin Chu nodded. He seemed to be in a good mood. Did you book the return flight? Not yet. The only return flight is after 12 a.m. and you won't land until 3 a.m. I'm afraid that you won't be able to rest well, so I booked you a hotel. It'll be better if you fly back tomorrow. That's not necessary. Cancel the hotel and book the 12 a.m. flight. President Qin, that'll be too much of a rush. You will be very tired, book the flight. After speaking those 3 words, Qin Chu turned around and walked towards the VIP entrance. Assistant Yang looked at his stubborn president speechlessly. How attached was President Qin to his home that he was willing to fly back at midnight. From past observations, the president didn't seem to have a close relationship with his parents. First hospital. Just as Huamian got off work, she received a phone call from a person who said that Qin Chu had asked them to pick her up. She did not know that Qin Chu had sent bodyguards because he was worried about her safety. Even though it was only a short trip from the hospital back to their home, Qin Chu was still worried. "Miss Hua, this way please," said the two bodyguards dressed in black as they pointed to a Mercedes-Benz. Huamian felt like they were making a scene. When she arrived home, she washed her face. Just as she sat on the sofa to rest, she received a call from her mother. "Mom, what's the matter?" Huamian asked nervously. She was scared that something had happened to her brother. "Go visit the Hua family later," Yang Meirong said in a serious tone. Huamian's chest sunk. The Hua family. The family without an ounce of affection or kindness. Did that person ask her to go back? Chapter 82. Grief. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Noodletown translated editor. Noodletown translated, Mom, I don't want to. Other than my last name, I have nothing to do with that family. Plus, I dislike that person. Huamian only felt hatred towards her biological father, Hua Zhenghai, one of the 10 wealthiest men in the city. All these years, that man did not ask about them at all. He did not give them a single cent and acted as if they did not exist. He did not even attend Uncle Jing's funeral, even though Uncle Jing was his chauffeur for 10 years. Such a heartless man did not deserve to be her father. "Go back, I heard that your grandmother passed away," Yang Meirong said with a hint of sadness in her tone. If there were one good person in the Hua family, it would be Granny Hua. She was an old lady who practiced Buddhism, and she moved out of the Hua family years ago to live in a temple in southern China. Huamian had met her once. A driver took Granny Hua to see her once, and she bought Huamian some pretty clothes and gave her money. But her mother did not take the money. Those were all things that happened 10 years ago when Huamian was only a teenager. Huamian's heart sank when she heard that her grandmother was dead. It was an awful feeling. "You should go, just ignore the others. Your grandmother treated you quite well and visited you when you were young. You should go and see her one last time." "All right." After a moment of hesitation, Huamian finally agreed. She walked up to her closet to find something black to wear to the funeral. But she suddenly realized that she had moved, and none of her black clothes were here. She only had work clothes and the white tee and jeans she was wearing right now. Worried, she opened the closet and was immediately stunned by all the clothes inside. There were dozens of outfits, all brand new with their price tags still on them. They were all luxury brand clothes, each worth more than 4 figures. Dresses, jeans, shirts, cardigans, jackets, shawls, evening gowns, everything that she would ever need. LV, Chanel, Versace, DG, Dior, Gucci, Prada, Valentino. Did he move the stores into her closet? Huamian randomly picked up a tag. She noticed that everything was size S, which was her size. Had Qin Chu prepared all this for her? But why didn't he say anything? This guy. After the shock, Huamian chose a black dress from the closet. She put it on, and the dress looked exceptionally good on her. She took a taxi and after 40 minutes, she arrived at the Hua family's mansion, which was located in the suburbs. From a distance, she could see a lot of black cars parked outside the door. It seemed like everyone was there to grieve. Huamian slowly walked over. "Excuse me, please show me your invitation." The security guard at the door stopped Huamian. Huamian had never been to this home, so naturally, the security guards did not know her. "I'm here to grieve for my grand." Huamian did not get the chance to finish her words when she saw a black Maserati pull up by her side. Then, the car window rolled down. Hua Xiqian said to the security guard, "Let her through, she's my younger sister." "Yes, young master." The security guard opened the door, and Hua Mian walked in. After Hua Xiqian parked his car, he caught up to her and said, "I didn't expect you to come. I thought that the last thing you would do is come back to this home." "Of course I didn't want to come. I'm only here to send my grandmother off for the last time, and it has nothing to do with anyone else," Hua Mian said coldly. "Mian, you look beautiful today." After speaking, Hua Xiqian did not wait for her response before heading towards the morning hall. "Crazy." Hua Mian looked at his figure and muttered, "Today is a day to mourn and grieve, is it appropriate to praise one's looks?" Hua Mian always felt that Hua Xiqian was quite odd, even though he was popular amongst women and well respected within the Hua family. Hua Mian also walked towards the morning hall. Everyone from the Hua family was kneeling there. Hua Zhenghai's wife, Jiang Hong, his mistress Shen Jiani, Hua Yanyan, and Hua Si were all present. In the middle was her father, whom she had not seen in many years, Hua Zhenghai. "This is..." Hua Zhenghai looked at Hua Mian, he couldn't even recognize her. "Dad, this is Hua Mian," Hua Xiqian introduced. Hua Zhenghai was dazed at Hua Xiqian's words. Dnov Om he had called Yang Meirong and invited Hua Mian to come, but he didn't realize that this child had grown up so quickly. Everyone looked over when they heard Hua Mian's name. Hua Mian, however, stood silently without a single hint of emotion on her face. Chapter 83. Guarding the Morning Hall. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Noodletown translated editor. Noodletown translated, Hua Mian. Which Hua Mian? That bastard daughter my dad had with a random woman. Hua Yanyan, the mistress's daughter, said venomously. She was completely spoiled and disregarded everyone. Bastard daughter. Well, if you put it that way, your mom is also a mistress. Does that mean that you are a bastard daughter, too? Hua Xiqian said with a smile, as if he was joking. Shen Jiani's expression changed after she heard his words. Hua Yanyan was also displeased. Big brother, how can you compare me with her? I grew up in the Hua family and my mother has a title. Her mother is nothing, she's just a B*TCH who ran away with dad's chauffeur. Hua Mian only looked coldly at Hua Yanyan and said, those who are well educated would never speak such vulgar words. It seems like the manners of a dignified daughter of the Hua family is subpar. Are you saying that I have no manners? Hua Yanyan was so angry she almost launched to her feet. However, she was stopped by Shen Jiani. Yanyan, don't cause trouble, remember where you are at right now. Since you are here, let's guard the morning hall together. Quan, give her a piece of the filial cloth. Hua Zhenghai finally opened his mouth to speak. Yes, elder master. Then, the servant brought over a long, white filial cloth. Hua Mian took over the cloth and tied it to her head. Then, she slowly kneeled down by the side of the morning hall. Her grandmother's portrait was in the center of the room. She looked amiable and kind. Hua Mian felt sad, but not to the point of crying her eyes out. That would be too fake. The members of the Hua family would kneel for a while before taking a break. Hua Yanyan only kneeled for a moment before complaining of dizziness, and she was escorted back to the mansion. Hua Si also escaped on the grounds of entertaining his friends. In the end, only Hua Mian and Hua Xiqian were left in the morning hall. Mian, you should rest if you are tired. You don't need to keep kneeling here. I'm not tired, Hua Mian said as she burned the joss paper in the basin. It's almost time for dinner. You should go and wash your face. I'm not hungry, Hua Mian refused once again. Hua Xiqian stared at her face silently. After a long while, he said, if it weren't for grandmother's death, you wouldn't have entered this house again, right? Yes. You are so direct, Hua Xiqian said with a curled smile. Hua Mian did not speak, she only silently muttered words of blessing. 30 minutes later, at the dinner table. Hua Zhenghai looked around but did not see Hua Mian, so he asked, "Where is she?" "She is still guarding the morning hall. I asked Xiqian to invite her to dinner but she said she wasn't hungry," Hua Zhenghai's wife, Jiang Hong, said. "Not hungry. I think she is just faking it to leave a good impression on Dad." "What a fake woman," Hua Yanyan interjected. "Yanyan, don't mutter nonsense." "Mom, I'm speaking the truth. My classmates said that people of ordinary backgrounds all seem innocent, but they scheme the most. They live at the bottom of society so they've seen so many ugly things." "Dad, you shouldn't believe her." Hua Zhenghai glanced at Hua Yanyan but did not speak. "I don't think Hua Mian is faking it. She doesn't need to suck up to Dad. After all, he hasn't done much for her all these years. She seems to be used to it." Hua Zhenghai's expression changed when he heard what Hua Xiqian said. It was true, he had forgotten that he had this daughter. If his mother did not ask him to invite Hua Mian to come back at her deathbed, he wouldn't have even contacted Yang Meirong. "Let's eat," Hua Zhenghai said after a moment of silence. 20 minutes later, everyone gradually gathered back in the morning hall. Jiang Hong said slowly, "Zhenghai, the feng shui master said that someone needs to guard the morning hall tonight. One person needs to stay here the entire night, and it would be best if it were a woman because a man's aura would interfere. Mother liked Yan Yan before she passed, so maybe Yan Yan should guard the morning hall tonight." Hua Yanyan's expression immediately changed. She said, "Mother, I can't. I have low blood sugar so I am always dizzy. My mom contacted a doctor who is coming later to give me an 4 drip. Why don't you ask my brothers to guard the morning hall instead? Guard the morning hall alone. How could she do such a horrific thing? She was the princess of the Hua family." Shen Jiani hurriedly said, "She's right, elder sister, Yan Yan isn't feeling very well. Why don't I guard the morning hall for her? No, it must be a member of the younger generation." "Mom, let Hua Mian do it," Hua Xiqian said. Then, everyone looked towards Hua Mian. Hua Mian was listening to what they were saying. It was not a big deal for her since it was also her wish to send her grandmother off for the last time. "Are you going to be okay doing it alone?" Jiang Hong asked. Chapter 84. Scheme. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Noodletown translated editor. Noodletown translated. Hua Mian nodded her head. Hua Xiqian smiled, "See, I knew my little sister Mian is the most reliable one. When it really counts, a person's true colors will come out." "Big brother, what are you trying to say?" "It's not that I don't want to do it, I'm just not feeling well." Hua Yanyan tried to explain. "Alright, stop fighting. It's settled then." Hua Zhenghai gave Hua Mian a complicated look. After 9 p.m. Hua Mian was the only one left in the morning hall. Several wreaths were placed on the sides of the coffin, within which her grandmother's body lied. She was told that the funeral was tomorrow so she would have to stay for the night. Hua Mian graduated from medical school and had worked in the hospital for so long, so she was accustomed to being around dead bodies. Besides, it was her close relatives, so she wasn't scared at all. Hua Yanyan is such a chicken. This family really can't be counted on. She slightly bowed her head to burn some joss paper. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. "You. Thank you for your work tonight." That old and sophisticated voice was Hua Zhenghai's. "I did what I should have done," Hua Mian didn't turn her head around and answered in a plain tone. "I heard that you hadn't eaten all night. I asked someone to prepare some late-night snacks for you. They will be here soon." "I'm not hungry." "How is your mother?" Hua Zhenghai asked with slight hesitation. "Thanks to you, she's pretty good," Hua Mian said deliberately. "You two have the same temper and are both so strong-minded. You are funny, President Hua." It's nice that we're self-reliant. After all, there's no one we can rely on forever, so relying on ourselves is the only way to go. Hua Mian's words made Hua Zhenghai a little jittery. Hua Mian, actually, back then. I'm sorry. I have no interests in what happened between the two of you. If there's nothing else, please leave, President Hua. Didn't the feng shui practitioner say that only one person could stay? Have you ever thought about coming back? I don't want to. Do you know what you're giving up if you reject my proposal? Some sort of right to an inheritance probably. I'm not interested. President Hua, you don't have to feel guilty. Grandma passed away now and I won't be coming back to this home anymore. You. Hua Zhenghai didn't think that Hua Mian would refuse to come back to the Hua family, even after he invited her in person. Xiqian said that she currently worked in a hospital and was still an intern nurse. She must have led a hard life. With one word, he could assign her to a high-level managerial position within the Hua Corporation, where she could earn a high salary without doing heavy work. However, she still rejected him. She really was just as stubborn and willful as her mother. Inside the Hua family's mansion. Xiqian, I see that you are really nice to that kid. Do you two talk to each other in private? Jiang Hong asked, looking at her son with a teacup in her hand. No. I want to, but she doesn't seem to like me. I can tell that you are very protective of her. Do you have any plans? Hua Xiqian walked behind Jiang Hong and began massaging her back. Mom, what do you think? Are you thinking about helping her come back to the Hua family so she can be on our side, and we'll be able to get more shares of the family company? Jiang Hong knew her son well. Although he wasn't her biological son, she raised him since he was an infant. She knew he wasn't someone who would get the short end of a deal. It is a good idea, but it's not going so well. That girl just doesn't want to come back. Maybe the shares would work on other people, but she doesn't even care about it. Besides, even though she's living an ordinary person's life, it doesn't mean that she's not happy with it. Really? I can ask her. If you want, I will help you. It's okay, Mom, you can enjoy retirement. Let me handle this issue. I'm not worried about the other two idiots. Hua Xiqian smiled slightly. Qin Chu was supposed to take a midnight flight and arrive in the city by 3 a.m., but he thought it would be too late. So, after he finished signing the contract, he drove to another city's airport and took a different flight to get back much earlier. It was only 11:50 p.m. when he got off the plane. After he got off, he went straight to his home at Imperial Park. He thought Hua Mian would be asleep, but the house was empty when he opened the door. Then, he gave her a call. Hua Mian answered her phone quietly. To let her grandma rest in peace, she put her cell phone on vibrate. Hey! You're not at home? Qin Chu asked. I'm at the Hua family, Hua Mian answered plainly. Qin Chu frowned slightly. He knew very well about the relationship between Hua Mian and the Hua family. Didn't she find the idea of going back to their home repellent? Grandma passed away. I am here to guard the morning hall, Hua Mian explained when she didn't hear a response from Qin Chu. My condolences, Qin Chu comforted. Thank you. Are you there alone? Qin Chu asked, worrying because there were no other sounds in the background over the phone. Chapter 85. Company you are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Noodletown translated editor. Noodletown translated, yes. Hua Mian answered honestly. Are you scared? Qin Chu's voice suddenly became gentle, like he was amusing a child. Why would I be? I went to medical school, so I'm fine around dead bodies. But when I think of Grandma laying inside the coffin, I'm still a little sad. Life and death are laws of nature. No one can do anything about it. Don't dwell on it. I know. After Hua Mian answered, she changed the topic. It's late. Why are you still awake? I just got back from a business trip. This late? Yeah. You must be exhausted. Get some rest, Hua Mian said softly. However, Qin Chu didn't have any intention of going to bed. Don't hang up the phone. I'll keep you company. Afraid that Hua Mian would say no, he quickly added, I want to guard the morning hall with you, just like this. Faced with Qin Chu's good intentions, Hua Mian didn't have the heart to say no. She knew deep down what he was like. Maybe she had been up for too long, but her eyes felt a little teary. Okay. After a long silence, Hua Mian answered with one word. She then put down her phone, but it was still connected. Yet, neither of them said anything else. There was no doubt that this kind of company was the most special. Although it didn't have any physical meaning, Hua Mian didn't feel alone anymore on that sad night. Hua Mian burned paper offerings for her grandma in silence without feeling sleepy even once, all the way until dawn. The sun came up by 5 a.m. Hua Xiqian walked over in a black shirt and suit pants, holding a vintage LV scarf. He put the scarf on Hua Mian before she could say anything. I don't need it. Take it. It was grandma's when she was still alive. Unless you don't like it. Hearing what Hua Xiqian said, Hua Mian felt bad saying no. If she didn't accept, it would seem like she detested grandma's stuff. Hua Xiqian looked Hua Mian up and down and laughed, Mian, my little sister, the dress on you must be worth a fortune. You're wrong. It's a fake. Oh, really? I know your salary isn't very high as a nurse. Speaking of which, your job makes so little and is so tiring, have you ever thought about coming back to the Hua Corporation to help us? Sorry, I am not interested in the Hua Corporation. Hua Mian rejected assertively. Hua Xiqian seemed to have anticipated Hua Mian's answer. He just laughed, Ha, do you have something against money? No, I have something against you. Hua Xiqian unfolded his hands innocently, Mian, my little sister, I have always been friendly to you. You shouldn't treat me like this. Hua Mian didn't say anything. At that time, the feng shui master they hired arrived, the morning has ended. You should go and get ready. We are leaving town at 7 a.m. for the burial. Hua Mian stood up slowly, but she realized that her knees were asleep from kneeling. As soon as she stood up, she began to fall over. Instinctively, Hua Xiqian came up to lend an arm. But Hua Mian dodged it and fell to the ground. Why would you do that? It's not like I will bite. Hua Xiqian was a little speechless. Hua Mian didn't respond. She slowly stood up while holding on to an iron rod by the funeral bed. Then she walked to the resting area, located beside the mourning hall. Seeing how obstinate Hua Mian was, Hua Xiqian's smile became deeper. When Hua Mian found a quiet place and was ready to sit down, she suddenly remembered that her phone was still on. She was still on the phone with Qin Chu. In that case, would he have heard the conversation she had with Hua Xiqian? She took out her phone to make sure. As expected, the phone call was still going. She didn't know if Qin Chu was asleep or not, so she spoke quietly into the phone, Qin Chu, are you asleep? Chapter 86. The funeral. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Noodletown translated editor. Noodletown translated unexpectedly. On the other side, Qin Chu only said quietly, stay away from that pervert Hua Xiqian from now on. All of a sudden, Hua Mian didn't know what to say. Did you hear me? Qin Chu warned her in a childish tone. Yes, I know. The funeral is at 7 a.m. right? A few minutes ago, through the phone, Qin Chu heard the feng shui master talking. Yes. Hua Mian nodded. I will wait for you at the gates of the graveyard later. It's fine. I'm just going to head to work at the hospital after this. I already asked them to give you a day off. Come home and rest today. Hua Mian was again speechless. This guy was fast. He had already asked the hospital to give her a day off. But she was very curious. The clinic had been really busy recently, so why did the head nurse give her a day off so easily? The head nurse, did she approve my day off? Hua Mian asked in disbelief. However, Qin Chu answered casually, I called Wu Zhongxing. Alright, you win. Hua Mian felt like all the blood in her body was going to coagulate after she heard that Qin Chu called Director Wu. A nobody nurse intern from the OB/GYN department called the hospital director to ask for a day off. It was a leap to death. On the other hand, based on Qin Chu's social status, the director would probably even allow her to take an entire year off. Okay then, see you later. After they finished talking, Qin Chu hung up the phone before Hua Mian could say anything else. What a coincidence. After he hung up the phone, Hua Mian realized that her phone was dying. Qin Chu kept her company on the other side of the phone without falling asleep for an entire 6 or 7 hours. He was persistent. Sometimes, Hua Mian had an illusion that Qin Chu was still in love with her, even if he hadn't said so yet. But it was only an illusion. Often, when she calmed down, Hua Mian would realize that they were both just unwilling to let go of the past. He couldn't accept that he was dumped 7 years ago. He couldn't accept that she broke up with him unilaterally. The sky was dusky on the day of the funeral, and the wind was blowing hard. Hua Mian's heart felt very heavy. There were about 60 people there, including the Hua family and their distant relatives. There were also over 100 guests outside. Over 100 black Mercedes-Benz followed each other in a grandiose fleet of cars. It was a spectacular scene. The car in the very front was a black Rolls-Royce with Grandma's portrait hanging on the front. Everyone attending the funeral was wearing black, with white ribbons tied on one arm. Reporters from several media sources followed the procession intently, making a scene. Hua Mian wore a black dress and sunglasses, following the crowd as an inconspicuous existence. Hua Xiqian, Hua Si, Hua Yanyan, Mrs. Hua, and the mistress were on either side of Hua Zhenghai. Of course, they were favored by the press. Hua Yanyan's attitude had changed dramatically from the day before. Tears streamed from her red and puffy eyes, triggering sympathetic reactions. The press gave her, specifically, a close up, while a reporter commented on TV. Hua Yanyan, the Hua family's princess, is leading the funeral procession, walking in the very front. Miss Hua looks extremely sorrowful, and her eyes are red and swollen. It is said that she stayed up all night yesterday in the mourning hall. The respect she paid to her grandmother has touched the whole world. Not only does Miss Hua have great looks, she also has a beautiful loving heart. What a precious woman. It's rare to see a kind-hearted woman like her in the upper-class society. The Hua family has taught her well. When this part was broadcasted on TV, Zhu Lingling was watching from an airplane and almost threw up. She was close to Hua Mian, so of course she knew the Hua family's situation very well. Several flight attendants were talking, Hua Yanyan is so nice. She's so pretty and kind. She must have been a big hero and saved the universe in her last life to be lucky enough to be born into the Hua family. Bullshit, this woman is not as good as she seems to be. She's vicious. Don't believe what you hear in the press, Zhu Lingling said angrily. If there was anyone nice in the Hua family, it had to be Hua Mian. The rest were all hypocrites. How do you know, Lingling? Are you good friends with Hua Yanyan? One of the flight attendants asked. Chapter 87. Hi, Key, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Noodletown Translated Editor. Noodletown Translated, how can I possibly befriend a person like that? I would become so depressed, Zhu Lingling said with a hint of disdain. The attendants of the funeral ceremony marched forward in streaming columns all the way to the North Hill Public Cemetery. Grandma Hua was to be buried in the best feng shui spot available, the peak of the mountain. Supposedly, a space in this cemetery cost 50,000 yuan per square meter. It was terribly expensive, but the Hua family purchased 2,000 square meters in one go, forging their very own, exclusive, mausoleum. On the side, Hua Mian stood silently with her sunglasses on. Suddenly, Hua Si walked up to her and said, "What are you looking at? Are you envious? This is the mausoleum that Dad bought exclusively for the Hua family. Don't even think about being buried here, a bastard daughter like you would never be qualified. A place like this is better suited for you and your family. I don't belong here," Hua Mian said without glancing at Hua Si. "That's a given," Hua Si said arrogantly. "Well, best wishes to you being buried here soon," Hua Mian added. "What did you say? You stupid girl." Hua Si raised his hand angrily at Hua Mian, seemingly wanting to hit her. "Mr. Hua, don't be so impulsive. The media is here waiting for scenes like this to increase viewership. But hey, if you want to be on the frontline news, go ahead and hit me. I will be sure to cooperate," Hua Mian lowered her voice and reminded him. Hua Si dropped his arm by his side and looked around to ensure he didn't attract any unwanted media attention. "You better watch yourself," he said resentfully before leaving. Hua Si and Hua Yanyan are strikingly similar. They were both born from mistresses, and they had both been spoiled rotten. Now that Hua Si was all grown up, the inheritance battle between him and Hua Xiqian had become increasingly more intense. Thanks to his father's spoiling love and his mother's help, his pride has grown enough for him to start acting like the owner of the Hua family. However, Hua Mian thought, a brainless idiot like Hua Si would be knocked out in seconds if Hua Xiqian really wanted to deal with him. The only reason why Hua Xiqian hadn't made a move is merely due to that celebrity mom of Hua Si's that was difficult to deal with. But then again, she wasn't at all interested in the Hua family's fight for inheritance. None of this had anything to do with her, regardless of the result. After the burial, all the vehicles started to make way back to the Hua mansion. Apparently, to show a token of appreciation to those who have shown condolences, Hua Zhenghai prepared a feast for 60 or so tables at a 5-star hotel. Hua Mian had already done what was required of her, so she surely wouldn't be going. Now that Grandma Hua had been buried, it was time for her to leave. After both the media and the Hua family left, she began making way down to the entrance of the cemetery. Rain began to pour as Hua Mian reached the entrance. While she was torn between running to the bus stop or the convenience store within the cemetery to buy an umbrella, a black 62S Maybach slowly pulled up beside her. Supposedly, this car was worth more than 11 million yuan, straight out of Germany with the best configuration and parts. A lot of mainland millionaires were fighting to place an order, but due to the limited amount of quantities allowed for Asia, only 6 of this model were imported into China. It was frontline news at the time, and a lot of nurses in the OB/GYN department were talking about it. Thus upon seeing this car, Hua Mian took a second glance at it. But wait, why does the person getting out of the car look so familiar? Qin Chu wore a tailor-made black suit with a tender white flower pinned to his breast pocket. He walked out of the Maybach, slowly propped open a black umbrella and walked towards Hua Mian. "Why?" Hua Mian looked at Qin Chu's outfit, not knowing what to say. She figured that he dressed like this out of respect for Grandma Hua. "Were you planning to run through the rain if I didn't come and get you?" Qin Chu asked Hua Mian. "Well, you are here, aren't you?" Hua Mian said slowly. "Come on, get into the car," said Qin Chu as he took out a white handkerchief and wiped away some of the raindrops on Hua Mian's forehead. Hua Mian sat in the Maybach made for royalty and looked at this amazingly handsome man who was now her driver. In a moment of bewilderment, she thought, it was not Hua Yanyan who had saved the universe in the last life. It was in fact, herself. "Qin Chu, your car, isn't it a little too flamboyant?" Hua Mian asked, unable to hold back any longer. The very first Maybach with royal class level configuration in Sea City. It will surely attract loads of attention when they drive around the city. Huamian couldn't help but wonder if this was really a good idea. Chapter 88. Wardrobe Malfunction. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Noodletown Translated Editor. Noodletown Translated. This was the only black car left in the garage, Chin Chu said lightly. Huamian was left speechless again. Must be nice to be rich. Chin Chu drove the car all the way back to Imperial Park, and, after Huamian went upstairs, she couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. Simply put, it was the feeling of safety and calmness that Huamian felt when she arrived home after a long day. Either out of habit or exhaustion, Huamian curled up on the couch and quickly fell asleep. Chin Chu furrowed his brows ever so slightly when he saw Huamian like that. It was as if someone was tugging at his heartstrings. He then brought out a white blanket from the bedroom and covered Huamian up. She fell fast asleep, and so, she dreamt. In her dream, she saw Grandma Hua, who was wearing a plain dyed gown. She sat on the rocks outside of a temple and was working on embroidering a handkerchief. It was said that Grandma Hua came from a well-off family, and she had the talent for embroidery. Later, her family went bankrupt, leaving her no choice but to brave the world in poverty with her husband. Grandpa Hua started from scratch and built his little manufacturing factory. He became overwhelmingly busy, and left Grandma Hua alone with her arts and crafts. 20.5 years ago, before Huamian was even born, Grandpa Hua passed away from lung cancer. Grandma Hua then moved out of the house and frequently resided within the temple. When asked, she simply said that she was praying for Grandpa Hua. In the end, she was nothing more than a woman infatuated by love. Huamian only saw Grandma Hua a handful of times. Nevertheless, to this day, she remembered the familial bond between them. She dreamt that she had slowly wandered over and rested her head on Grandma Hua's lap and fell asleep. The sunlight that shined through the temple surrounded her, and Huamian felt a sense of happiness that she could not explain with words. When she woke up, Huamian found a white blanket on her. The quilt was made with bamboo charcoal fiber, so it felt soft and silky on her skin. Other than Chin Chu, she couldn't possibly think of a second person who would do this. She checked her fully charged phone and realized that it was already 11:30. She slept for more than 3 hours. Huamian felt a little hungry. She yawned and went to the sauna room on the second floor. On the second floor, there was a Korean-style shared sauna room that allowed for showers and saunas. Huamian never really used it before. She felt like it was too inconvenient since she shared this room with Chin Chu. But Chin Chu wasn't here today, she was home alone. It would be a good idea to relax a little in the sauna room. However, it wasn't until she finished showering that she realized she forgot to bring in a towel. Out of necessity, Huamian grabbed 2 tiny towels from the sauna room. She covered up the most important parts of her body and carefully walked out. She followed the hallway that leads to the bedroom, but then the door of the study magically swung open. Huamian was dumbfounded upon seeing Chin Chu. Huamian attempted to clutch the tiny towels tighter, but out of nervousness, she lost her grip. Both towels fell to the floor. Ah! Huamian shrieked. Not knowing what to do, her hands flew up to cover her face. Why? Because she once heard a joke about a public shower place that caught on fire. A lot of women ran out, some covering the top half of their bodies, while the others covered the bottom half. One particular woman walked out calmly with her face covered. This way, no one will know who I am, the woman said proudly. Therefore, Huamian automatically covered her face. Chin Chu was stunned by her reaction. He looked at her exposed body and felt his throat tighten. Chin Chu tried hard to control the urges deep within in his heart. There's only the two of us, is it really necessary to cover your face? Chin Chu asked as a hint of awkwardness floated in the air. Chapter 89. Pervert. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Noodletown Translated Editor. Noodletown Translated, hurry up and get out of here. Huamian panicked when she peeked through her fingers and noticed that Qin Chu had no intention of leaving. You are walking around the hallway naked in broad daylight. Are you sure you are not trying to seduce me? Qin Chu chuckled slightly and never for a second moved his eyes away from her body. I didn't know you were home. Who knew you would be home at this hour? Don't you have to work? Huamian said angrily as she pointed at Qin Chu. Her face glowed with fury. Qin Chu remained silent as his eyes followed her plump curves up and down. You pervert. Huamian felt like she had been completely exposed. She pushed Qin Chu away and ran towards the bedroom. Come on Mrs. Qin. I am legally your husband, okay? Qin Chu couldn't help but mutter to himself in the hallway. In the bedroom. Huamian refused to leave the bedroom after she changed. She had no idea how to face Qin Chu anymore, it was way too embarrassing. Also, how dumb was she to listen to that stupid joke and attempt to cover her face. There were only 2 people in the house, and in an attempt to cover her face, her body had been exposed completely. Not to mention that Qin Chu pointed out the flawed logic of covering her face. If Xu Lingling ever found out about this, she would surely question her status as a genius with an IQ of 130. She felt like her brain forgot how to function properly over the last 7 years. Most importantly, Huamian thought Qin Chu was at work. Shouldn't the president of GK be super busy? Why the heck was he chilling at home in broad daylight? Plus, it wasn't even the weekend yet. Can someone tell her what was going on? Truth be told, Qin Chu was supposed to go to work today, but he was worried that Huamian would wake up with nothing to eat. So, he decided to work from home via telecommunications. He had just cleaned out his email inbox when he noticed that it was almost noon. He thought Huamian would wake up soon and therefore walked out of the study. He had no idea that he would be able to witness such an interesting scene. It was true that they slept together once 7 years ago, but it wasn't exactly a great experience, because they were both young and NA.VE. They were both adults now and had been married for several days. Yet, they had not slept in the same bed once. Now that this had happened, it was much more awkward, for Huamian of course. However, Qin Chu thought whatever happened was a good thing. It wasn't until today that he found out how curvy Huamian was. He never thought that the thin and bare-looking Huamian would have curves in all the right places. For a moment, he wanted to charge over and have her beg for mercy under him. But he knew that it wasn't the time, and doing so would frighten her. Qin Chu waited in the living room for a while but Huamian still didn't come out. He figured that she probably felt embarrassed. Hey, are you going to hide in the bedroom forever? He went upstairs and knocked on her bedroom door. Go away. I will come out as soon as you leave. Me leaving doesn't change the fact that I saw everything, Qin Chu smirked. Stop talking. Huamian covered her burning face. So, are you not planning to have lunch with me then? Don't you have to go to work today? Huamian asked behind the door. I'm staying home all day today, so there's no point in hiding. Why are you such a crook? Huamian said angrily. I'd be a crook if I were to hide a camera in the shower, don't you think? Qin Chu said slowly. Huamian was left speechless. Come on, let's go eat. No. Fine, if you are going to keep being stubborn like this, I will call Wu Zhongxing and tell him my wife will no longer be going back to work, and that you plan on hiding in the bedroom forever, Qin Chu said as he pretended to leave. Stop. How dare you interfere with my job? Sure enough, Huamian immediately opened the door. Good thing you came out. Come on, let's go eat. I'm starving, said Qin Chu as he began heading down the stairs. Huamian wore a set of beige sportswear, her wet hair sitting loosely on her shoulders. Her getup made her look much younger, almost like a high school student. Inside the Maybach. Chin Chu stared at her for a couple of seconds, his eyes showed a slight tenderness that was difficult to capture. What are you looking at? You've never seen a pretty girl before. Hua Mian said as she looked away and intentionally avoided eye contact with Chin Chu. Chapter 90. Habit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Noodletown Translated Editor. Noodletown Translated. Yes, I've definitely never seen a pretty girl who would only cover her face when she's naked, Chin Chu smirked and answered slowly. Hey. Hua Mian walked right into his trap. She was so embarrassed that she wished the ground would just swallow her up. I'm leaving the car if you don't quit it, Hua Mian said as she tried to open the door. Settle down. Chin Chu gripped her arm. Hua Mian felt the warmth of his palm underneath her clothes. She couldn't stop her heart from beginning to race. Chin Chu loosened his grip and returned his hand onto the steering wheel. None of them spoke another word throughout the drive. 30 minutes later. The car parked by a street filled with food behind 2nd High School. Memories rushed towards Hua Mian as the sight of her old high school filled her eyes. I heard this land had been bought. Oh yeah. When? Chin Chu asked, unconcerned. Probably sometime this year. There were lots of demolishment signs here last year, and I heard the school will be moved to the suburbs. I heard differently. I heard that no one will be touching this land anymore. Really? Hua Mian asked in disbelief and looked at Chin Chu. Yeah, apparently there's no business value, so no one wanted it, said Chin Chu as he turned and walked into a noodle house. Ah.Xian's Ramen. The noodle house was called Ah.Xian's Ramen. The owner of the place was from Taiwan, and he was roughly 40 years old. His name was, of course, Xian. His wife was a local of the city, so he followed her and moved here 20 years ago. They had a son and a daughter and were very content with their lives. Chin Chu and Hua Mian used to come here a lot back when they were in high school. Hua Mian came here because this place was tasty and cheap. A large bowl of ramen only cost 2 yuan. It was delicious, even though it only had green onions in it. Initially, Chin Chu was very reluctant to try street food, but he couldn't resist Hua Mian's invitations and began eating it as well. Habits can sometimes be very frightening. It can be difficult to change something once you are used to it. Hua Mian stared at the noodle house. Everything looked the same as it did 7 years ago. For a moment, she felt like she had been transported back in time. Hua Mian never came back here after she and Chin Chu broke up. She was afraid that the place would tug at her heartstrings and bring up old memories. She would have never thought that Chin Chu would take her here today. Sir, 2 bowls of ramen, said Chin Chu. No problem. The noodle shop's owner replied enthusiastically as he began boiling some noodles. Why are you still standing there? Come here, said Chin Chu as he noticed that Hua Mian was spacing out by the front door. As if pulled back into reality from a long dream, Hua Mian slowly sat down. Sir, how much is a bowl of ramen now? Asked Hua Mian curiously. It should be at least 10 yuan now, given how inflation had been going. But, the owner only chuckled and said, the same as it used to be. 2 yuan. Hua Mian asked, astonished. Yup. Aren't you losing money with today's high costs? Hua Mian doubted. I wouldn't say I am losing money per se, but I am definitely earning very little now. The boss wiped a bead of sweat off his forehead and chuckled. So why don't you raise the price? It's not like anyone will object. Because I wouldn't want to destroy people's memories. A lot of the high school kids would come back every year to reminiscence. Sometimes, I feel like I'm not just selling ramen noodles, I'm selling the memories of those that were once here. Sir, you shouldn't be selling ramen, you should go and be a writer. You are a carbon copy of Yu Qiuyu, Hua Mian chuckled. Nah, I don't have much education, so I don't understand no literature. But my wife did say that happiness cannot be bought with money. I find meaning when you kids eat here and tell me that it makes you guys happy. So, I try not to think about money. As long as I have enough, it's fine. Sometimes having too much money can be burdensome. Not many think like that. It's rare for people to hold your perspective. Chin Chu glanced at Xian and said. The owner only chuckled and said nothing more. After a couple of moments, 2 bowls of steaming hot ramen noodles were served. With much anticipation, Huamian took a bite. It was just like 7 years ago. It's so delicious, Huamian said. Eat more if you like it. Chin Chu's heart skipped a beat as he watched Huamian's face fill with content. Sir, bill please. Huamian took the initiative and waved her hand after they finished. Don't worry about it, Chin Chu prepaid quite a lot of money. The boss chuckled. You prepaid? When? Huamian asked, slightly surprised. 7 years ago. How much did you pay? Huamian glanced at Chin Chu in disbelief, as if she were looking at an alien.